As the AI engineering comes up, and one of the things that I also think is going to happen in the future is software as you think of it now is going to be different, because your interface to the computer to some degree is going to be able to live code solutions for you in real time as you need them. And so imagine a world where you don't install Lightroom, you talk to your computer. It's like, I just took 1,000 vacation photos and I need some help organizing them. And it creates the UI for that for you based on your taste in real time. That, I think, that sounds super futuristic, but Claude already has things like called artifacts that do these sorts of things, but with web UI and dashboard creation and so on, and it takes a few seconds.
Welcome to Modern Logic for Your Business, where we talk about AI and technology. I'm Andy Rahn, and with me is Dustin Bruzenak. Do you need help with implementing modern technology at your business, like AI or apps or other things? Why don't you reach out to us? You can find us on the internet at modernlogic.io. Today, Dustin and I have a great conversation where we talk about some new research that came out of Anthropic, the makers of the Claude AI model. And their research talked about how is AI affecting learning in the workplace. And from there, we spider out to all kinds of interesting thoughts around the future of work and the role of how AI is going to impact your business in the future. So stay tuned.
The Starbucks person thinks we're ready to do this. You can do this. Oh my God.
That's great news, because I gotta say, just now I wasn't sure.
Yeah, that's just they know more than me.
Yeah. So interesting feedback from people. They want to hear about more than just AI from us. So we're not making changes right now, but we're thinking about just broadening what we talk about on the show. Because let's face it, we've been in business for over 10 years. What was
15
years?
15.
We have done a lot of different. I guess you could say technology is a common thread. So we'll start talking about other things, because even though a lot of what we talk about with AI is like future looking, like last week, we were really like, there won't be software in the future. But the fact is, in the present, there is software, turns out. We're using a tool to record this. There's so many different software programs we use on a daily basis. And sometimes software technology is really the right thing. I would love to, at some point, talk about Umbraco, for example, a really powerful way to host big government websites and things that have a large team collaborating on content and stuff. That's a really powerful software tool. You don't just replace something like that with AI today. Who knows what else we'll talk about? I thought it'd be fun to just even reminisce for a sec about some of our favorite projects, just so folks get to know a little more about what we do and who we are. For example, do you remember the time two people came to us and they said, is there a way you can collect data about all the systems on an automobile using a phone? And we're like, what? And so we started digging in, and we figured out that all modern automobiles had this connector underneath the dashboard.
This is
it was for insurance
sensors,
or something.
Right?
But they wanted to know about the safety
getting into
systems.
A collision.
Yeah.
All these modern cars have so many sensors.
And right. So we found there's this port, and you could plug in a device that had Bluetooth on it, and then we could connect to that using a phone, and then basically talk to the automobile over wirelessly with your phone to gather all this data about what what the car could do. And then we automated a whole workflow with nice, cool graphics, all in the mobile app, and export to PDF. That was a really fun project. As with so many startups, ultimately, I don't think they were successful. But it wasn't a technology
I think they may have
problem.
sold the IP. But yeah, it's when you go talk to startups, what I love about startups is they're all trying to change the world. And the one fact we all know about changing the world is it's really hard.
The world sometimes doesn't want to change. It's got its way of doing
the world sometimes doesn't want to change.
Or just like they might have been 5 years too early. They could see this would be a problem. But at the time, like established players doing that, like, what do we need this? We have our clipboard.
If you just wait it out, like my great example of waiting it out is my previous business that we ended up selling was an analytics business. And we had come up with a podcast, funnily enough, analytics tool. And we went to sell it alongside our sales tool. which was selling great at the time. And we sold 2 copies of the podcast tool in 6 months. And it basically did the same thing. It would log in to all these different sources and download how many downloads you have and what your metrics are. This is a problem we have right now today.
Yeah, where is this product?
And no one bought it, so we killed it. And it turns out 2010 was not the time to launch the podcast analytics product. It was probably something more like 2025. And like the number of times I've done that, part of the reason we want to expand the scope of the podcast is all of these technologies are interconnected. They all feed your business. And our focus has been through our entire career helping businesses bring, for kind of tongue-in-cheek, modern logic into their business. And so we've been the technology wizards that are like, how do I connect to a car? Oh, we don't necessarily know that, but we're good at figuring it out. Let's go. And that's why AI is so exciting, is I think it's a sea change that's rippling through all of that. But before that, we did mobile apps with integrations with cars, and we did an app with a Finnish watch company called Suunto. They do dive equipment and watch equipment, and they were launching a new smartwatch. And this was before the Apple Watch. You might have gotten a taste of things to come right there. We'll give an update in a minute. And they basically wanted us to build a mobile app that integrated with their watch. And that was one of the first times that a company had done that. And so we got to do that. And of course, they launched a month before the Apple Watch launched.
But it's also, it's so interesting. I have another story, but Apple has such great marketing clout. It's sometimes hard, even if you have a brilliant product, to get noticed as effectively as Apple can get noticed when they go on stage and they say, here's one more thing. And so Apple announcing the Apple Watch really brought to mind what a smartwatch could be. Do you remember? This basically happened to us with Lightroom, because at Adobe, we had this new photography product and we couldn't explain to anyone what it did until Steve Jobs went on stage and said, introducing Apple Aperture, and clarified, a photo management tool. That actually sounds pretty handy. And now we take it for granted. It's photos. It's Google Photos. This kind of thing is ubiquitous.
I also feel like, and you can correct me because I came in on beta 3, which was a couple years in, but it was before the 1.0. There was a moment, I think, internally on our team where we saw the Aperture team launch and we're like, oh, we're building that. There's like even internally, I mean, I think Lightroom ultimately did kill Aperture, right? And I think so our fundamental technology was really good because it's Adobe and you don't mess with Adobe on image. But I think there was a bit of R&D kind of trying to find your way on the map, and inside there's like a drawing of a dragon in a cloud, and we're like, what are we doing here? And that's development cycle was a little bit like this, but then Aperture gave, okay, we need to get serious, right?
I would actually say it gave us the bravery to admit, I wouldn't say we're wrong, but a lot of companies, when they have an established product, so Adobe had Bridge, which already was an asset management tool, entirely file system based. But you could say, why would we build a new manager? It takes a certain amount of bravery to do that. Think about Kodak. They invented the digital camera, but were making so much money on film, they couldn't commit. And where are they today? They're basically a non-player. They may not.
In fact, they had developed their own version of a digital camera before.
Oh yeah, like the cameras that were sent.
They shelved it.
They were the ones who innovated cameras that were sent to Mars and stuff, like in the 70s. Like they had such a head start, but they were just printing money, making film. They never did. Actually, my synapses are firing. This connects me to something we want to talk about today, which is the bravery to go against, okay, maybe not profit, but to go against convention or popular opinion. We were
Before we dive into the main topic, though, we did promise the audience we would give an update on the puppy situation.
Yes.
And I heard the puppy earlier.
She's asleep again, though. But yes, let's just say at some point, this is like, where's Waldo? She will wake up and start climbing on my face. And that'll be the reveal where you all get to see the new puppy. But you have to watch very carefully because she's right here. Wait, are you awake, little girl? Do you want to say hi? You want to say hi to everybody? Okay, this is Olive. She's 12
Which is the most adorable puppy ever.
Yes, but she is sleepy. Do you want to go back to sleep?
It's a very
you're on a podcast. The whole internet is watching, sweetheart. Yeah.
I think this will just be one of our social clips. It's just the puppy. We'll see if that'll be the one that goes viral.
Oh, she's tangled up in my headphone cord there, of course. Yeah.
Yes, we have a new podcast assistant.
Yep.
So.
The new podcast host. She likes to chew on microphones.
Okay, sorry. I just wanted to, because you were like, we'll give an update in the next podcast. So I wanted to make sure we deliver on those promises.
Yeah. That's
also,
right.
I wanted to see the puppy. We'll just be honest. She's so adorable.
Yeah. So,
all right. Going against your interest.
Yeah, it's going back here. So we were just reading this really interesting article from Anthropic, and that's the company that creates this AI model called Claude, right? They did a study about using AI at work. Does it interfere with learning? And because you could obviously think, oh, if I'm just telling AI to do my job and I don't have to actually think about it, I'm not going to understand and learn how to do that thing. And what they found is, yeah, actually AI does pretty much in the abstract. They're like, yeah, using AI at work can interfere with especially novice workers' ability to do tasks because they may not actually dig in and figure out what's going on. So I thought it was really brave of them to basically come out. Here's a company that makes money selling AI to say, actually, if you use it, your workforce might actually not know what they're doing like they used to. Yeah. It used to be someone works for you for 6 months. They really understand what's going on. It might be they still don't really know what's going on. That could be a real negative thing.
What's awesome about Anthropic is their research team will publish AI research regardless of whether it is good research for Anthropic and for Claude. And they're doing part of their stated mission is to make sure that AI aligns with humanity. And this is what I like about Anthropic. At least they're paying, you never know what's happening under the hood, but at least they're paying lip service to the amount of damage this amazing technology might be able to cause. And they're doing the hard work of researching and figuring out how to mitigate these things. So I'm sure they'll be like, okay, based on this, here's how to solve it. And one of the things that they said in the article or the research paper is AI itself isn't causing the lack of learning. It's when you take AI and you don't then introspect on why it did the things it did and how things work. So when they paired it with people that then asked it questions, why did you do this? How does this work, etc., they didn't see that gap in learning. It was really specific to the people who did the thing and then moved along and puppy.
So this will be known as the puppy episode.
Yeah, it's the puppy episode. And then they moved along and didn't bother to learn why it did the things that it did. And I think in the hands of an expert, you probably don't see that decay just because the expert is using it to do the things they already have done a million times and just don't need to do another time. Example I was using with my wife when we were talking about project setup, because she works on video games, is how many times do you need to set up the folders and the libraries and the project template and the manifest file and before your eyes are bleeding. And so much of programming is that. It used to be like a solid week of setup to get any production project ready to go, where we'd be like, we can't show you anything in the first week because it's just setup. It's getting the GitHub set up. It's making sure all our tooling and linting and testing and frameworks are all installed properly and they're all used across the team. And now you just tell AI to do it and you have it in an hour or half hour. And so I think it's interesting because the use case is relatively constrained, especially on the junior side, but the challenge and the risks are very real. And you don't want to hand wave around it. But one of the questions that I have is, do skills matter in a world where a tool can replace a human doing that skill?
Right? They do talk about how in traditional workforce, you often went from doing the thing to supervising doing the thing. So examples are like factory that's been replaced with robot automation. So you used to physically have people with hammers and screwdrivers, and now this robot can weld pieces together. But even in a regular career progression at a company where it's all people all the way down, you often are promoted from being individual contributor to being a supervisor. So the question is, can you perform that supervisory role effectively if you don't actually know how to do the work. And I think maybe there's some aspects you can just fully delegate and be like, I don't need to know how that works. My underlings, in this case, if the AI is my underling, are 100% reliable on that. You could say, yeah, I don't need to know how that works because they have that. On the other hand, if they're not 100% reliable, then the buck stops with the supervisor. And I think we're still at that point where even in a traditional management structure, who gets blamed if, a division fails to meet their targets for the year? It's the director. They needed to have their finger on the pulse or the VP or whatever. So I think we still need these people to know what the work that needs to be done, how it's done, in order to supervise AIs that do it for them.
I disagree a little bit. I think it's really, as a supervisor, so, I've stepped back from coding about halfway through our company history. So it's an increasing amount of time.
Yeah, we don't let you
I used to say 5 years, but now it's more. Now they don't let me.
Sometimes you get the bug and you make a spreadsheet and we're like, dear God, please stop.
And the spreadsheets are the spreadsheets are things that are like they should not have been created. They're a curse upon mankind because they're so complicated. Because I need to get that engineering out of me somewhere. I try to get it out in video games, but it doesn't all. Sometimes legal review is another space that I go nerdy. But anyway, I'd say you need to know enough to know, one, what you want, and two, what good looks like. And I think most CEOs don't know how good design is done, or how your web marketing website was built, or most managers don't know how the machine on the shop floor works. And you don't need to know that because it does the thing, and you know who to call to repair the thing, and you show up and it just keeps doing the thing. The designer knows how to do the design. You just need to know, here's how I convey what I want. Here's how I validate that I got what I want. And I think those skills matter because a good manager can come in, and they don't necessarily have to have been a coder to manage coders. I think there are some inherent advantages to having mastery of the thing you're managing, right? Because you, as an engineering lead, are much better positioned to mentor, for example, and lead your team and identify those skills. But I think there are probably good engineering managers who have never coded. I think it's just
could you have an engineering manager who doesn't know how to code when all they have working for them are
people who don't know how to code?
These people who can't be trusted to do it, it's where AI is right now. Super productive, volumes of code, but scattered amongst all those beautiful cookies are little piles of poo. You need to know how to tell the two apart.
You need to have someone senior on your staff who understands what quality looks like.
Yeah.
And I think that doesn't necessarily have to be the manager. And I think this gets to seniority and our view of the future of knowledge work, which is your team is going to be, you still need senior people, and AI is going to then augment those senior people and allow them to do more. And the role of juniors is a much more difficult role in that future, because I think what you're seeing is that the people you used to delegate to, you can now delegate some of that to the AI as a senior person. But I don't know that you can remove the Andy from the equation and have work that the manager is then going to thumbs up. At least right now, I think there are ways the AI could move in a few years that might do it. But at least in the near term, I think you still need that senior person. And really, the question is what happens with the juniors.
I just can't see a future where we're like, oh, well, no one's learning the critical skills for how this all works. We'll just carry on for the next decade. And all the people who actually understand how software works will retire. And we're left with people who only know how to ask the AI. It just doesn't. Sometimes I'm like, am I just the old guy, get off my lawn? Because the same arguments were said about compilers. We're never going to have good code running efficiently on a machine. If I don't know, this is too technical, maybe people don't know what compilers are, but it used to be literally people would sit and write the ones and zeros that the microprocessor actually interprets. And then people are like, that's really hard. Let's add some kind of human-like language. And those were called programming languages. And then there were people who hated that because a tool had to turn the words into the ones and zeros, and how did it do it? It might make a mistake. It might not be as efficient as if I did it myself. But that argument is long since over. No one writes machine code by hand anymore, except in very rare cases, like if you're doing embedded systems that are super power constrained, you might do a little bit, but it's going to become a fringe.
And then
thing.
You have those visual coding languages that come in. And so as the tools get more, Excel, for example, I imagine when VisiCalc first launched, there were similar kinds of complaints about you need to crunch the numbers by hand and tabulate things in a certain way and so on. And now we just use the power tool, because the power tool, which Excel, which VisiCalc is the first spreadsheet, if I recall correctly. And
it ran on an Apple II, I think.
Yeah, it was an Apple II. We're old. We're getting old, Andy.
We're the first. All right.
Yeah. But no one ever questions using Excel. And I think to a similar level, I was just reading a sci-fi book, and they were talking about programming, the role of programming. And this is 100 years in the future. And they're talking about how programmers used to have to write code. And now you just tell the computer what you want, and it does all that stuff for you. And you don't need to know, because the computer does the thing. And yes, there do need to be a few people in specialized areas who know how the computer works and how the code works. And so maybe programmers in some version of the future are the ones that they're the new hardware engineers. So you and I don't know anything about building new processors. Like, we might have a rough concept of how processors work, but the people who need they work at NVIDIA and Intel and AMD and Qualcomm. And those are a very finite set of computer people in general. They get paid more because they're specialists. And I would imagine a future where we continue down this path looks more like that, where people like you and me and Dylan and the coders we have on the team are more specialized, and we're deployed into places maybe like Modern Logic, where understanding how to write code works. But for the majority of use cases, the power tool is good enough. And
I sort of feel like I'm agreeing with you through a different lens. But let's say we were pretty cocky when we worked at Adobe. We thought we were really special.
When we worked at Adobe.
Yeah. But there may be an element of truth that the team that Adobe requires, that they put in their company, it's good folks who are really capable. And maybe, we used to look down at, JavaScript coders, although some of my best colleagues at Adobe worked on JavaScript. But for some reason, I kind of looked down my nose at them. But some of the frameworks like React, they attempt to really just give you a really simple view into how to start creating like a web application. And so someone can get their hands in and actually start being productive in a relatively short amount of time. And that's really empowering. But you might say, are those people really the same breadth of capability as a software engineer as some of the folks I worked with so much more experience and ability to work in so many different languages and the ability to bootstrap, having seen it before, learn? It is two different, at least, stages in career, or maybe possibly even two different kind of entire roles. And maybe AI is really certainly going to devour that first case more, because if it takes a human being 4 weeks to figure out how to start being productive in an environment like a very simple React application, it really makes sense that AI is going to those kinds of opportunities for work for humans are going to start to evaporate much more quickly than an integrated imaging pipeline, where you have to have deep knowledge, like you were saying, of how the architecture of the microprocessor itself works, and the level 1 cache, the level 2 cache, and aligning your pointers so that they all stay in cache, like those kinds of things that we used to think about. Those probably harder to get.
It's gobbledygook to even the majority of engineers listening to that. And I used to tell people, and I think this is still true, if you want image development done, if you have pixels that need to go on screen and you need something done to them, they need to be sharper, or you need to do a clone tool, or any of the million things that you can do in Photoshop. There are like a handful of people on the planet that can do that. And most of them work for Adobe, right? And some of them work for NVIDIA. We, as a consulting team, are the only consulting team I've ever run into with that skill on team.
Just because we
don't sell a ton of that, right? Because there isn't a lot of need for it.
No, there's not a lot of need for
it. But when you need it, and I think similarly, we're going to see those kinds of specializations happen, where the C+ engineer is a pretty highly paid problem solver. And most businesses don't have senior engineering problems. They have AI engineer problems as the AI engineering comes up. And one of the things that I also think is going to happen in the future is software as you think of it now is going to be different, because your interface to the computer to some degree is going to be able to live code solutions for you in real time as you need them. And so imagine a world where you don't install Lightroom, you talk to your computer. It's like, I just took 1,000 vacation photos and I need some help organizing them. And it creates the UI for that for you based on your tastes in real time. That, I think, that sounds super futuristic, but Claude already has things like called artifacts that do these sorts of things, but with web UI and dashboard creation and so on. And it takes a few seconds. And so you can see a world where the majority of the use cases that the executive or the business person has interface on the computer is this dynamic interface that's generated. Right. What is the role of the software engineer in that world? It's giving that system capabilities, right?
It is giving that capability, right? The work of creating interfaces for things might be less and less because those can just be created as needed automatically, certainly. And that's kind of what we talked about last week. Back to this article about learning, I still think we just can't, as a society, say we're going to do away with learning. I think we need to figure out a way to empower folks to continue to learn in the workplace. And back to another topic we've talked about, which is like, the really good work people are doing is not the 40 hours a week. Maybe it's half that time. And so in addition to saying, hey, in the future, like most people are work 4 days a week instead of 5, seems perfectly reasonable. Another thing we might see happen is that we're providing those learning opportunities directly to our folks, because it's not necessarily going to always happen automatically on the fly anymore, because so much of, I don't know how to do this, I'll ask the AI. Oh, it seems to have done it. I'm moving on. I never actually learned how to do the thing. And actually knowing how to do the thing is going to be more efficient in some cases than always having to delegate to an AI asking it. And I think that's one of the things the article showed, because it actually showed like 6 different learning styles, or maybe I should say styles of interacting with the AI to solve a new novel problem. And some of those styles of interaction actually did foster learning and some did not. If basically like just AI solve this problem, it didn't work, paste in what didn't work as text and say, AI, fix this, then it still doesn't work, fix it again. That style does solve the problem, but actually it was slow and the user didn't learn anything. Whereas someone who says, hey, AI, solve this problem, now explain to me how what you did solves this problem. And ask questions and drill down and then get it working that way faster. And the novice was learning things about the problem domain there as well. So part of this might be, let's learn how to use AI so that it's effective, not just to solve the problem, but to be a learning experience while you're doing it.
And I think we're going to have to, as business owners, be more intentional about investing in education for employees and understand our ROI. And that's the part I think for me and I think for most people that's unclear, is we don't know where the tools are going to land anytime soon. And so it's really hard to say, my people are going to need to know this in the future. And it's really easy to hand wave and say, no one's going to need to know anything. And I don't think that's the right answer. Just to be clear, as much as I'm bullish on AI, I am also acknowledging our stance is that we're going to still need senior people, if only because senior people have taste and have the ability to determine what good looks like, what quality looks like, what bad looks like, what wrong looks like. I think we need, and because we need those people, we need junior people who will become those people. And what does that gap looks like? As a small business, how much can I afford to invest in that as well? This is something I used to have conversations with people at Fortune 500s all the time, my friends at bigger companies, about their role in educating the future of the workforce, because I might be able to educate 1 or 2 people for 6 months.
And it's actually really expensive for us. We've taken interns on, and it takes a lot of my time. It takes a lot of my team's time. And we don't necessarily get value back from the work that an intern produces.
And
is a
it's
big
extremely
problem.
high risk because we educate them, they get a year on their resume, and they move along.
And that's
Whereas a
happened as
company
well.
like
And now they're
Target can
at
afford to
Google,
hire
they're at
50 people.
AWS.
And I'm very proud of where our interns have gone, and they were
Oh, I know.
exceptional interns.
It's
But I
great.
think when you go and talk about what is the role of your company, we're not educational institutions started to educate people on how to
No.
be better at what they do, which is one of the reasons why we're so much a majority senior person company, is just because of the expense of those things. But as you grow, you have to think generationally, legacy wise, what am I built? How am I building institutional knowledge that can then be conveyed to those that next tier of managers after this tier? So if you're designing your business to run for more than 5 or 10 years, you need to be thinking about this kind of stuff. And how are people going to move up, and how are we going to educate
Honestly,
them?
and it's not just up, but I feel like one of the skills everyone's going to need more of are the non-specific critical thinking, kind of liberal arts major style things, because even the fact that people are over relying on AI and then realizing that what they turned out was garbage, that was a lack of critical thinking, I think, on their part. It's like you should have a little bit of skepticism. Like, it's the old snake oil all over again in some cases. And we have to be aware that there are people trying to peddle AI can do anything. Like, AI will keep your deceased loved ones alive, and they create like a website where you can talk to dead people. This is actually out there. Please, what a pile of garbage.
Yeah. Right now, right? We've had this conversation in the past, and no one can predict how good the technology is going to get. But like, certainly you see people with the work slop phenomenon and the AI slop phenomenon generating things that any reasonable person of taste will look at and say, that's objectively bad. And yet you have the amateur person who generated it thinking this is good enough. And honestly, for some use cases, maybe it is good enough, right? Maybe slop is good enough. Maybe you shouldn't be doing that at all, would be my argument. But I think
I've just another anecdote.
Go ahead.
I was saying, this reminds me of just this funny story, because I and your brother, we have debated fiercely. What is the definition of art? Given that there's these AI generation tools that you could prompt them to create new art. And at first blush, it seems like AI is not creating art. It's just stealing from other artists. And certainly when I look at AI generated art from a few years ago, and it has a look, I'm like, it looks like Midjourney from 2023 or something. Then I start to realize it really just had a gestalt. It wasn't innovating new things. It had just kind of synthesized what was out there. But that's not to say that these tools can't be used artistically. That's an interesting new field. But there's just this funny anecdote. There was a contest, like, all right, create the best piece of AI generated art you can, and prompt away and try to come up with something unique. And the winning image that was generated was this bizarre thing where it was like this snowy kind of obscure background, and then a one-legged flamingo with no head. But it looked really real. And they're like, this is cool and out there. But then it turned out it was a real photograph. And so they took the prize away. I thought it's hilarious turnabout. It's like the
exact opposite of what's happening in the real life.
Yes.
Where they're getting disqualified for AI. They were disqualified for not using AI. But there's a point there, right? And I think the ultimate thing with art is both in the mind of the creator, but in the person who is receiving the art. And I think my view of art has always been, if it makes you feel something, it's art, right? Other than disgust, right? If you're looking at it, that's horrible, and you're feeling like that's awful, that's a different.
I don't
but
necessarily
if it's making you connect with humanity and so on. So I think the question then becomes the role of the artist. What is the role of the artist in creating art in a future world? Where is it? And I think this is a new tool that we now need to explore. So I'm not completely negative, but I also think I understand the people who've been doing art for 20 years is just going to be better no matter what tool they're using.
I think I was trying to come back to the earlier theme of learning and workers. Here, the people who are evaluating this contest maybe weren't using the critical skepticism and kind of those skills that we want to foster in our workforce when evaluating that image, because they were fooled. And that's the risk when using AI. In this case, they were fooled by something real, which is with a funny twist. But when using AI, the risk is that you'll be fooled by something that seems, oh, yeah, great, let's just roll it out. But if you didn't have sufficient thought and skepticism about what you were doing, what it actually is happening under the covers, I think that could be a real risk to your business.
And this reminds me of a presentation I was putting together, and I had placeholder on I used AI for. We ultimately replaced it all, but I was using AI just to have something, and there was a puzzle piece where I was like trying to talk about the missing piece of the puzzle, and it showed the puzzle on the ground and then the puzzle piece, but the puzzle piece that it showed did not fit into the hole in the puzzle. It was a completely different shape because AI didn't understand the relationship between the puzzle and the puzzle piece. And one of our engineers caught it because engineers are detail oriented people. And I was like, yeah, it did the job of filling that space for me, kind of laying out the slide, but it also wasn't what I needed. And it was one of those things where I didn't look at it critically. And so I ended up with a piece that was a bit embarrassing, and thankfully it was intended to be placeholder. So that was fine in that case.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of people who would have just shipped that, and then you end up with someone with 4 fingers. You end up with something happening in the background that you end
up with chatbots that will just make stuff up, which happens a lot. Like you're trying to make a functional assistant that'll do things for you, but it's so eager to help that it actually will choose to lie about what it's done rather than admit that it couldn't do whatever you asked it to do. Which is like,
and this is I think
helpful.
where this is where skill still matters, and developing skills still matter, because regardless of what tool you use, you need to look at the output critically and then know how to get the tool to generate output that matters, that matches what you're trying to produce. Whether or not that tool is AI or not is largely immaterial. And I think that AI is normal technology. If you're just dumping what AI is producing out onto the internet as your marketing, you're going to have a bad time.
Yeah, because it lacks taste. It lacks creativity. And it lacks the spark of what makes your business special.
But if I go and then I pay a content producer to write something for me, for example, this is something we've done a bunch because we do case studies and web work and all that kind of stuff. And they produce quality writing that matches and delivers the ROI that I'm paying for at a price that I choose to pay. I don't ultimately care if they use Scrivener, Word, Google Docs, or Claude. To me, Claude is just another one of those tools. All I care about is what it does. And I think that is where I think there's a lot of huge space for debate in that space between I'm getting the ROI that I want, and here's how I got that ROI. And in there is a huge risk that we leave junior people behind, and that we're not developing that next generation of tastemakers, of quality people, of senior developers that can then manage that talent. So the future of work is in a lot of ways delegation, and part of delegation is receiving the result of what you delegated and interpreting it in the context of what does quality look like, what does ROI look like, what do results look like. And if you have a business that's built around delivering ROI no matter the cost, no matter what it took, with no consideration for what the next ROI down the line is going to look like, what the next quarter or the next year or the 10 years down, you're building something similar to what we call technical debt in software, right? Which is the idea is you're running up debt on a credit card, and you can only do it so much. And you're doing that to accelerate your market time, your ROI. But at some point, you got to pay the credit card down. And with technical debt, that can be bugs, it can be crappy code, but the UI works, so ship it, right? But then 10, 20 years down the line, you go and try to add a button, and suddenly the whole thing breaks, or it takes 6 months to add the button because all of the past decisions come back to bite you. And in a similar way, there will be a place in your business 10 years down the line where Andy retires.
Yeah.
Right.
And
no one in your business can take over that work.
Yeah. It's another thing that comes that I've seen from this, like the technical debt. That's a coder term, but I think you're right. It will apply to other aspects of people's businesses, especially as AI is doing more and more of the work. So you got spreadsheets full of content that was created by an AI sometime in the past, or you have things in your ERP that were all leads that were generated from AI that are in some status that no human ever actually looked at. So that can be a problem because it might not be high quality. There could be actually inaccuracies in there. Another thing I've seen recently come about is, AI will solve that problem for you. And so actually a former client of ours, I was just talking with them to see how they're doing. and they were complaining about a person on their team where, oh yeah, we have all this technical debt. They're changing like the entire structure of their code base using AI. So there'll be this massive change in the morning. The AI worked all night and the whole code base has changed. So every process, basically everything everyone knew about it, has now been upended. It seems to still work, and it should be better, right? We cleaned up all this technical debt. But the problem is that itself becomes like the thing that happens every week. They're doing this now. And so are you actually getting ahead? Like, oh my God, it's
what are
so
you,
meta.
What are you buying with that?
You're just churning. You're just confusing everyone.
It's probably a whole new podcast, a different topic to talk about. Does quality matter in a world where quantity just so massively outproduces quality that you can get the result by producing 100 versions of the thing, right?
What's
now,
the point? Just
quality
throw it away
matters,
and start it over,
right? Just throw it out and start it over. Here's what our app looks like. Here's some screenshots. Rebuild it, and rebuild it 20 times. And we're going to run those 20 times through an AI that can drive it and make sure all the buttons work. And these are the two that are the top. And now I like that one better. That could be the world we live in. But at the end of the day, you still have someone who is the decision maker deciding what are the ones that are better. And I think the other piece that you're missing is something that you're seeing in manufacturing right now, which is manufacturing is very top heavy from an age standpoint. So all of the knowledge. So there are people in companies right now who've been there for 30 years. When the machine breaks and someone needs to do it the old way, or someone needs to show up and immediately fix it, or the shop floor is going to be down for 3 days, or something needs to get duct taped, or something's making a noise. Does that noise matter? Does it not matter? There are people who have all that implicit expertise in their head, and they are retired. And so there's this brain drain, because the younger team members, they know how to work the machine. They're perfectly skilled and sophisticated, but they haven't been there since the beginning. They don't know where the bodies are buried. They don't know where the duct tape is. They don't know that machine in particular had something replaced 10 years ago. And and we bought a part that was cheaper, so we knew it was going to break again, but it got the thing done right.
Or the squeak actually is a deliberate design choice. When it starts squeaking, that means you have to replace the thingamajig or something terrible will happen. And someone might just think, oh, it's squeaking. I put some oil on it.
And so they don't understand that context. And I think that's what you're going to see in a lot of these knowledge work positions. It might be that especially with software, the automation of the software gets to the point where really it doesn't matter what's happening underneath the surface. What matters is what you're asking it to do and the output, right? But you're still... What happens when you can't get it to do the output that you need? Then you have to have someone that you ideally can call into your office and be like, why isn't this doing the thing? And they can get into the guts of it. It's like one of the tricks I used to do when I was consulting in my mid-20s was a website wouldn't be working. And I'd be like, okay, why isn't the website working? And then I'd pull open the terminal and I'd telnet telnet is a way to connect to computers. It's an old, like from the 90s way to connect to computers. And then I would manually send the same requests that your browser is sending behind the surface by hand, by typing in what's called the HTTP GET request. And then I would see the output in just raw text format. And I could identify, okay, this is what's going wrong. We can connect to the server. This is what we're getting back. This isn't the right server. This isn't getting updated. It'd have all these headers that the browser just leaves away. And people would be like, whoa, you're a wizard. Because what they saw was the Matrix, where the green screen
pretty much
and me, I can interpret that. And you want someone somewhere that can open the hood of the car and say, that ain't right. And what we're talking about is building these much more sophisticated engines that less and less people are going to be equipped to open the hood and look at how it's working. And that is, I think, a natural part of human progress. But what in those cases is expertise gets more and more specialized, more and more expensive. And I think that's where a lot of that knowledge work is going.
So are we headed for a reckoning, or do you think this will sort itself out naturally where people will start to realize, oh, we built all these really critical systems with AI, but we don't know how they work. And so we're going to call in high-priced consultants to actually untangle it for us? Is that what happens?
I think this is if past is pretext, right, I think what we're going to see is people like us, Modern Logic, and teams like ours become more and more specialized to solving these problems. And the reality is the 80% problem that every business has, that's just going to be magic. It's just going to work. And what you're going to pay, like you pay your managed IT company to manage your desktop computers, you don't know how they work or what's going on the network layer. You don't need to know. That's not what your business is good at. So I think there will be places where you're paying a management team probably a low amount to access the small fraction of the Andy that you need to keep the widgets working. But I do think that the role of software, the role of expertise, it's for certain going to change. I think there's going to still be, for your business, what I would say, just if I put on my crystal ball and my hat, and
your
tinfoil
hat,
it's a fedora for some reason. I don't know why.
Imagine ball fedora. I love it.
I don't know why, but it's enough. I'll have AI draw it at some point. I'm also the godfather of R&D tax credits, so I can just put those things together according to AI. We should post that picture in the show notes for people. It's ridiculous.
It's classic.
Salesperson sent me an AI version of myself as the Godfather trying to sell me R&D tax software, and it says the Godfather of R&D tax credits, and then it's me like over Marlon Brando's. It was exceptional, but also creepy, right?
We're amused by this today, but I wonder if in a year or two that'll be how all advertisers are going to work.
Yeah,
like it's me, vacation at Disney World. It's
at least you can look at it and imagine. But so back to where I was going. If I had to say, looking forward, the place to invest in your business is going to be the thing that makes your business unique. Your unique selling proposition, right? Your USP or your UVP, unique value proposition, is something business owners talk about and think about all the time. And the places that increasingly are the 80% busy work that we've been encouraging people to use AI for a long time, that is going to get easier and easier. You don't necessarily need to develop expertise in R&D tax credits, for example, because what we do right now is we go and we pay a firm to do our R&D tax credits. And in a similar way, you're just going to be using the AI to do that. And when the AI doesn't get you the results you need, then you're going to pay the firm that knows how to do that for the minuscule number of businesses that the AI can't solve. And so you're going to see more and more of those business processes, just like you've been outsourcing them to software for 20, 30 years, just going to continue to get outsourced to the technology stack so that you can, and in a way, that's my utopian view of the future, because running a business, you can run a much more high-powered business with a smaller, more expert team. And then you just got to consider, how do I inculcate the Modern Logic way, our sense of taste, our sense of value, the things that make us unique, into the next generation? That's where you invest in teaching your employees how to do things, not so much investing in here's how to use the new marketing tool, because the tools are already changing so much that most people
in the short term
are obsolete every few years.
If it is part of your business process, you still have to do that. So like we're in the transition period. But looking forward, that'll be less and less.
So that's my view of where things will go. We'll see. Check back in a year and we'll see where we're at.
Yeah. So check the show notes. We'll put that awesome picture of Dustin in there for you. Also, we'll put a link to this article from Anthropic that we talked about early in the episode. Probably we should let people go. As often happens when Dustin and I start talking, the minutes just roll by. So we appreciate you sticking with us. So thanks for joining us. Be sure to follow us on other platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Our show is produced and edited by Ryan Peterson, with additional contributions by Dylan Bruzenak, the twin, Anna Spitz, and Beth Davis. Do you have technology questions that you'd like us to talk about, or questions about things we talked about before? Please get in touch with us at modernlogic.io/podcast. We'll love to hear from you. So thanks so much for listening.